Hey everyone, it's Brendan, and I'm going to see if I can beat the rain to do a couple of real quick things here on my Corrado today, continuing just some maintenance projects. Have a few things to tidy up. My auxiliary water pump, the after run pump, has been running badly, making a lot of noise, and I've noticed it's inconsistent, so I got a new one. I went ahead and got the Gruven Parts bracket for it as well that will replace the soft rubber bracket, which mine actually appears to be in fairly decent shape here, but this billet bracket will hold it there nice and securely, keep it from vibrating around as much. It's supposed to start raining any time now. I am seeing some very small drops, so I'm just going to see if I can get into this and get this knocked out. Basic maintenance, just keeping it running as good as possible. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. In order to get to this little auxiliary electric water pump, you just do need to remove this plastic cover here. So it means I have to unplumb the wires that are secured in it. And I shouldn't have to actually remove them from the cap and rotor or anything, just move them out of their channels. And that'll give me access to a couple of these little bolts that are holding it in place. And if I recall, they are 6mm. They're triple squares. Oh no, they're bigger than that. Let's see what they are. They are triple squares, but I think I can use just an Allen socket to remove them. I've had these in and out a few times, so I know they are not Kung Fu Monkey Voodoo Death Grip tight in here, and they really do not need to be. The only reason they would be super tight is if they've never been removed before and there's some corrosion holding them in place. Sadly, I did not beat the rain before I was able to get this stuff done, so we're going to have to postpone it for another day, and it's going to rain for like 3 days. So as simple as this work ought to be, it's just not destined to happen right now. So I'll report back as soon as I do have the opportunity to get into it. Until then, the Corrado is going to get put away, and she will just be nice and cozy and waiting. Hey, welcome back. So when we last talked, probably just been a quick edit ago for you watching this, but it's actually been about a week since I've been able to get to this, because we've had a week of rain, which is pretty unusual for San Diego. But I'm going to get into where we left it off, which is replacing the auxiliary electric water pump and a breather hose, and putting in a different bracket here from Gruven Parts. So gonna get to that, and I think that will pretty much call it a day for the work we're doing on the Corrado here today. But in the week of rain, we have also discovered that our 2003 Toyota Sequoia has developed the typical well-known leak in the rear hatch. For those of you who may have a Sequoia, you may have noticed that when it rains, you get a really musty, mildewy smell in the car, and you might be looking around the front of the car trying to figure out where it's leaking from. It's actually the back. The back hatch has a very poor factory design that we'll get into when I go over and deal with that, but there's an easy fix for it. That's the good news. But since it's been raining, my Sequoia has had that issue, so we've had a fan going in the back of it to pull up, not only dry out the carpet, but the pad underneath the carpet. Right now I've got baking soda in there as well to absorb any sort of mildew smell. We're going to go ahead and kill the mildew with vinegar as well. And when that's all dried out, then we'll go ahead and do the rest of the repair. And yeah, R2D2 is reminding me that we also have to get to the R32 this week, which has a broken sensor connector up in the front end, which requires taking off the whole front end in order to fix that. So got a few projects we're going to get to, but we're going to start with the Corrado today and just wrap up the problem that we had here. Now I did go ahead and get a new auxiliary water pump because the old one, I noticed, depending on where it was shifting on its rubber factory bracket, would work or not. It would so obviously it's worn, and when you shift the orientation just slightly, and the little fan inside it that moves the water actually gets caught up, then it's definitely time to replace that thing. So picked up a replacement, brand new. Funny thing is, when I went to look in my parts hoard after I'd already bought a brand new part, discovered that I had 2 of them set aside already. So I've got some extras. It's good news. This one lasted 200,000 miles, so hopefully we'll get some time out of the next replacement as well. And you know, sometime around 2050 when I need to replace it again, I'll be all set. So we're gonna get to this. Okay, if you are going to be doing this same thing, removing this bracket and replacing it with the Gruven one, I've already taken off this piece from before. I'm going to go ahead and remove this other electric connector, which goes to the PCV valve actuator, just so I don't break it in the process. I'm also going to use a little bit of penetrating lube on the rubber bracket to be able to slide it out a little bit easier. Now, I know some people will be like, you're replacing it with a metal bracket, why bother being so nice to the rubber bracket? Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is somebody might need it. We're in a small community of a rare car, and you know, if somebody ends up needing this thing, I want to be able to just hand it off the stupid little rubber piece, and I might not need it anymore, but somebody might. So I'm gonna try to preserve it, keep it in my hoard of parts. The other thing I'm going to do down here is spray just a little bit of the penetrating lubricant on the actual hoses that I'm going to be taking off of this old motor, just so that it comes off a little easier. And just blast that a little bit down there. Great. Okay. I'm gonna go get those locking pinch pliers also, which will block the coolant from leaking out as I take this off so that I don't drain a whole lot of it. I've got brand new coolant in the car from the last work that I did on the coolant system, so we're in good shape. I don't want to drain out more than necessary. This is what I'm talking about with these squeezy hose pliers. Basically, you clamp it around a hose and you can lock it into place, and it prevents fluid from running through the hose without damaging the hose. So these are like $10 at most auto parts places, so just really easy and cheap, and highly recommend it if you're working on anything in the car where you have to disconnect hoses. Use these. So anyway, down here for this motor, I've got one traditional hose clamp, Alright, Loctite makes blue thread locker in this stick form, which is wonderful because it doesn't drip. And you just take a little bit of it and run your threads on it, and that's it. That's enough. You don't need a crazy amount on here. Just a little bit will do the trick. And again, we don't aim for Kung Fu Voodoo Monkey Death Grip with this sort of work, just enough to keep it from undoing itself under regular heat cycling of a motor. Start tightening down these brackets. Again, I'm using a rounded wobble bolt Allen extension, and doesn't have to be crazy amount of torque, just enough to hold that motor happily in place. So I think that's gonna do it really well. So snap the connector back on. Well, as is the case with many Corrado projects, turns out they sent me the wrong part. So this connector has 2 notches in it, and this only has 1, so this will not mate up with that. I'm left with the choice of either snipping this connector off and replacing it with one that only has 1, or swapping out this motor for one that has the proper 2 notches on it. I happen to have another one because, as I mentioned before, I've bought multiples and just forgotten about them, so I'm going to go ahead and swap the motor for the correct one and just call it a day. Alright, so I got the other motor in place and just turned on the car and turned it off to let it run, check for leaks, and the after run motor is running quite happily. And of course, true to form, even though the San Diego newscasters said that there was not going to be any rain, it is starting to rain. So I'm going to see how much work I can actually get done before I can't work anymore out here. So we'll see. Well, I am happy to report that the extra motor that I had lying around, which I just must have been extravagant, because usually I don't buy the actual Volkswagen part. I'll get something that is, aftermarket that fits the purpose, but this is an actual Volkswagen Bosch part. So I let the car run, warm up to temperature, and it's doing great. So the after run is running smoothly. There are no leaks. Very happy about this. And while I was waiting for it to warm up, I did take the opportunity to jump in and fix another niggling problem that had been bothering me, and that was the fact that I do have this aftermarket radio. Now, it's not a complete fix, but let me explain what the issue was. The issue was, I've got this aftermarket radio. It's made by Custom Radio Systems, and they make radios for semi-trailers and professional truckers. They're some of the only people that still make radios that use the DIN wiring that plugs in directly to this radio harness, and have a semi-period correct look to it with green illumination, which matches the factory green illumination, which I happen to like. So I didn't want a radio in there that looks like, it's going into a rave or something. I wanted something that looked factory, but that had modern conveniences like Bluetooth and CD player. So I got this CSS 5910 or a 5920 BT unit, and it's great. It sounds amazing. It works awesome with the Bluetooth. It fits in the dash. It's flush. It looks great. And the only issue was that the illumination seemed to be opposite from the nighttime illumination. So when I turned on my lights, it went to full bright. And when I turn off my lights, it went to the dim setting. which is opposite of what it needs to be. Now I'm still working out the details with the engineer from Custom Radio. He's actually been kind enough to jump on the phone with me, and we've sent some emails back and forth. We're trying to diagnose what might be a solution to this. But in the meantime, he suggested, if it didn't bother me too much, just snipping the wire that goes to the nighttime illumination on the back of the harness. And since I have an aftermarket pigtail from Crutchfield to extend my harness and feel like it was a big deal, I'm not touching the factory wiring, I'm not hurting anything. So I just snipped the wire and put a little bit of black electrical liquid tape on it to make sure it wasn't going to ground out or cause an issue on anything. And so for right now, it is just in the permanently dimmed mode of whatever I want it to, which is fine because I don't really need the lights on during the daytime. You can see everything just fine. So anyway, a temporary workaround fix. I took care of that while I was waiting for the motor to warm up. And as I talked with the engineer, hi Paul, if you're watching this, we're going to figure out what a more permanent solution would be if there's something that needs to happen in order to make it work correctly with the rheostat that I've got in my factory harness here. So anyway, that's it for the Corrado for today. I'm gonna go ahead and clean her up and put her away.